Welcome to Electric Car Australia and a follow-up to our video on the Australian launch of the BYD Atto 3 electric car. Now, we had lots of comments and feedback on this video from viewers wanting to know a little bit more about the background and the history of the company that's bringing it to Australia and also the people behind the company. So today we thought we'd take a bit of a look at that. So you'll notice we're back at the desk filming this video again. I think this is about the third video in a row we've been at the desk, but never fear, we will be back out on the road shortly. We've got a Polestar 2 review video coming up, and we've also just recently done an overnight camping trip to Noosa. So we will be bringing you guys a video about that one, talking about the consumption and just what the MG ZS EV is like when we take it camping. So back to the content of today's video. So the two main companies behind the BYD electric vehicles coming to Australia are EV Direct and parent company Nexport. Now both these guys are doing some interesting deals. They're announcing more BYD 100% electric vehicles coming to Australia. They're expanding their high-profile network of individuals and investors, and they've recently announced that the BYD range of electric vehicles will be available through Australia's largest car dealer network. So let's delve a bit deeper into this. So as we mentioned, Nexport is the parent company of EV Direct. Now, EV Direct's the Australian online retailer of electric vehicles. So the first brand that they've launched is the BYD brand, and there is other brands coming, but that's the first one. And as we mentioned, we've done a video on the Atto 3, so that's their first mass release model, I guess. Orders are now open for that, and they're looking for deliveries in late July, I think it is. Again, check out our video. We'll include a link up above if you want to know a little bit more about that Atto 3. Now, they're also bringing another model in, hopefully this year. That'll be based on the BYD Dolphin, and I think in Australia they'll be calling that the Atto 1 or the Atto 2. They're looking to launch that around December this year. So again, we'll bring you guys more information on that as it happens. So let's take a quick step back and ask, why are all these companies getting into electric vehicles and energy storage, including all the legacy car makers that have made their fortunes on fossil fueled vehicles, petrol and diesel, over the years? And I'd like to think it's for health and environmental reasons, but of course reality says that they're in it to make money. And also potentially, particularly in overseas markets, they're in it because the legislation is saying that vehicles need to be cleaner. They've got tight emission standards, so they need to be moving into this clean vehicle area. And also, I think they realise that this is a step change in technology. So I've mentioned this before, it's a bit like the old Sony Walkman using the cassette to play your music. This is a step change into the Apple iPod digital music space. You know, there's already globally a big move to move not only passenger vehicles to electric, but also machineries, forklifts. We've got electric ferries operating around the world now. We've got machinery, farm machinery, and we've even got electric airplanes being operated as well. So this is a big step change in the way that we move freight and people around. So look, I think going back to electric vehicles in particular, the Nexport executives and team have identified there's a huge interest in passenger EVs in Australia, and it's growing every year. Not to mention the recent increases in fuel costs. So as we know, petrol and diesel prices have just recently gone through the roof. But even before that, dealers could not meet demand for electric vehicles. Australia's a low priority country or market in the global supply chain for various reasons we won't go into today, but we're certainly down the pecking order when it comes to prioritising EV supply chains. And look, the EV Direct founder and CEO Luke Todd has said that EV Direct took close to 1,500 orders when they launched the Atto 3, and that's a full month's production on the specialist right-hand drive production line at BYD in China. So as soon as they open orders, they filled a month's worth of production, so that's amazing. Look, the Australian CEO of Kia has also recently said that when they launched the EV6, they took 1,500 deposits and they only actually had 500 cars. So Kia's only committed to 500 cars to the Australian market each year. So they sold 3 years worth of cars as soon as it was launched. So just huge demand. MG in Australia has already taken 200 orders for the Generation 2 model ZS EV in the first week of having orders open there. And Google has 2.24 million searches per month just for the Tesla Model 3. And that was before we had the fuel cost increases. So people really want EVs, and I think Nexport appear keen to get involved in this EV market, and they also offer other sustainable and zero emission transport options, and we'll have a look at those as part of this video. Now, it appears Nexport want to be really in the thick of this stuff, and of course that takes time and money. So Nexport not only are into importing electric vehicles, passenger vehicles that is, and selling them to the retail market. There's many other businesses they're in, and we're going to have a look at all those today in this video. But it all takes money, so they need investors, and some of those foundation investors have been with these guys for a number of years. So we'll check out who runs Nexport and where they get their funding shortly. But first, let's check out what else they're into and how it all links together, because it is a bit of a rabbit warren, so we're going to try and make it a bit simple for you guys. So look, what do Nexport do? Well, they're an interesting company. There's lots of pieces to it, but in general, they're focused on zero emission transport, end-to-end solutions for business, and a transition to cleaner transport. So lots of great buzzwords there. But look, in a nutshell, they seem to have two main market approaches. One's to approach the retail market, and one's business and government. So having a quick look at the retail market, that's obviously EV Direct, and we've talked about those guys. They're a middleman. They're looking at importing electric vehicles direct from manufacturers and selling them direct to retail customers. And as I said, they've got their website up and they're taking orders for the Atto 3 as we speak. The business and government division, now that's made up of lots of different moving components, but what they're looking to do there is basically provide a one-stop shop solution to transition to zero emission fleets. And they're doing this by bringing various partner relationships together, and that's providing a compelling business proposition. Now, in my industry, that's called a single throat to choke. So you've got a project manager or one person that you deal with, and then they're working through all the ins and outs with everyone else. So a single point of contact for business is really attractive. And what they're looking to do there is make the transition for businesses to zero emission or sustainable transport really easy. And that's by coordinating and managing the fleet transition, and they mention through the areas of planning, infrastructure, charging, connectivity, porting, performance, return on investment, choosing assets and vehicles, electric, hydrogen, and financing. So there's lots of components, and what they're saying is we can help your business with all those components. We'll bring it all together and we'll make it nice and easy for you. So this business and government side of Nexport is actually quite a big division, and it looks like that they're going to be putting a lot of time and effort into growing that. So some of the key technology and joint venture partners that Nexport bring to the table, and we'll have a look at some of these really high level now, and then later on in the video we'll look at some in more detail. But one of them is Gawson, a French engineering company. Now they have the Australian agreement to distribute Gawson's range of electric and hydrogen vehicles in Australia and New Zealand. Alexander Dennis, so they're a UK manufacturer of bus bodies, so the big coach type bodies, and they've got an agreement with those guys to locally assemble those bodies here in Australia. BYD, obviously, they've got an agreement with those guys who are a Chinese manufacturer of electric vehicles and batteries. Photon, they're a hydrogen fueled electric bus company. Now Nexport's got an agreement with those guys, and they're looking to bring their hydrogen buses to Australia. Also got an agreement with Tritium, or a joint venture with Tritium. And of course, they're one of the global leaders in DC fast charging. Their head office is based right here in Brisbane in my backyard, and they've recently listed on the NASDAQ. So they're heavy hitters in this space. Quick Step, that's an Australian manufacturer of lightweight composite materials, and the University of New South Wales. and they're working with those guys to build a purpose-built lab for the development of technologies for electric buses. And finally, another recently released partnership between Nexport and Energy Australia, the retailer of electricity and gas, and they also generate electricity as well. They've set a partnership up with those guys and they're calling it Road and Beyond Electrification Offering to help the public and private sector customers accelerate the uptake of zero emission transport. So let's see what all those buzzwords mean as time goes on. But look, besides all this business stuff, the retail side is also very important to Nexport because it provides scale and it provides quite quick scale. So once they get these electric vehicles on the market and retail customers start buying them, that will really ramp up their volumes. And we'll have a look shortly about some interesting stuff that those volumes will help with. So as we mentioned, the retail side of the business will be called EV Direct, and they're the online seller of the BYD electric cars. But a new group has just been established called the BYD Dealer Group. Now, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. This is the deal that they've done with Eagers Automotive. So that's an Australian share market listed public company. And they've done a deal with those guys. It's a joint venture. Eagers, or Eagers Automotive, I should say, have taken a 49% equity stake in the joint venture. And overnight, that has allowed EV Direct to provide all their vehicles through Eagers motor dealerships, and that provides another channel of sales. So not everyone's comfortable, as some of the comments and feedback we received in our first video on the Atto 3, not everyone's comfortable in buying online and paying a deposit before they see the car and all that sort of stuff. So they've signed a deal with Eagers, and that'll allow them to distribute the vehicles through Eager dealerships. People will be able to go in, have a look at a car, talk to a salesman as you normally would, pay a deposit, order the car, etc. One thing they've mentioned though, there'll be no haggling on price. So the price is the same no matter whether you buy it through an Eagers dealership or you buy it direct off the EV Direct website. And as we mentioned, there is other BYD models coming, and I'm eagerly awaiting to see the Dolphin. So they're saying that that'll probably be called the Atto 1 or the Atto 3 in Australia. And that's a little compact hatchback, and it's touted to be around the $35,000 Australian mark. So this is really the end of the market that I personally am interested in, and that's what the YouTube channel focuses on. But also these are the vehicles that are really going to take sales of EVs in Australia to the next level. So the quicker we can get these happening, the better. And these guys are one to watch because they've got a model in the pipeline. So Nexport also own a taxi company. It's called eTaxico, and it operates in Sydney, and it has a bit hard to get info, but I think around 50 BYD E6 100% electric hatchbacks in its range. Now look, they've been on the road in Sydney since 2020, and they're looking to ramp that up to about 2,000 taxis. Now, 45,000 of these exact vehicles operate as taxis in Shenzhen in China. So these vehicles are certainly well proven in that industry, and it'll be great if these really take off in the taxi fleet in Australia. So good to see those being trialled. So Nexport are also looking at the rideshare industry. Now they've done a deal with Splend, and they've taken an order for 3,000 battery electric vehicles. Now they'll be for exclusive use of the ride sharing industry. So you can lease one of these vehicles off Splend and use it in your ride sharing business. So again, great to see zero emission tailpipe vehicles getting into that industry. So that sort of wraps up the retail side of Nexport's business. And now we're going to have a look at a bit more detail of some of the industrial commercial type businesses they're involved in. And please let us know in the comments if you'd like to see some more videos that go into more of this commercial type stuff rather than the domestic stuff. And we'll look to do some more videos in that space soon. So firstly, let's have a bit deeper look at Gawson. So this was the French engineering company we mentioned earlier, And Nexport are currently distributing their range of 100% battery electric or hydrogen vehicles. Now these are perfectly suited to operating in these sorts of environments, so they're ports and airports. And these vehicles are expensive and they're specialist, and they also generally have very long lifetime. So if we can start to get some of these hydrogen and battery electric vehicles into this space here in Australia, that's going to be a fantastic outcome. And the other advantage of those types of vehicles is you don't need to build a whole heap of infrastructure because those vehicles, they go out on the tarmac or they go to the ship loaders and back. So your charging infrastructure is minimal. So perfectly suited to that sort of environment. So let's have a look at Alexander Dennis, the UK bus manufacturer we mentioned earlier. Now look, Alexander Dennis have already taken orders for over 1,000 electric buses across the UK, Ireland and New Zealand. So these guys are already working in this space. Alexander Dennis and BYD already have a global agreement in place, and they've got buses that are on the road and have done over 48.3 million kilometres already. So those two companies working together are already tried and tested. And Nexport's obviously bringing those two partnerships together into Australia. And Nexport will be building a manufacturing facility here in Australia. And they'll get the BYD electric bus bodies. And I'm assuming they'll receive Alexander Dennis flat packed bus chassis, and they'll put those together here in here in Australia. So that's a really good outcome because we'll have assembly of electric buses here in Australia. So now let's have a look at Nexport's relationship with BYD. Now BYD, the Chinese manufacturer of electric vehicles and batteries, they've been around for approximately 24 years, so they really know their stuff. They're the world's number 1 or 2. The rankings change slightly, but they're 1 or 2 in the world in the manufacture of electric vehicles. Really know their stuff. And look, Warren Buffett, the world's most famous investor and arguably successful investor, he owns about 25% in the business, so he's certainly got confidence in what they do. So we've talked a lot about their cars and their buses, but they're also into machinery, forklifts, industrial type machinery, and of course energy storage. They have home batteries that you can put on your house, and they've even got a sky rail. So these guys certainly have technology and experience in a large range of industries. And just another thing on buses, so BYD are currently the largest supplier of electric buses in Australia, and that demand is only going to increase. The New South Wales state government has committed to transition their entire 8,000 bus fleet to 100% electric by 2030. So that's not too many years away, and 8,000 is a lot of buses. And of course, to do that, we're going to need a lot of manufacturing facilities. So Nexport has recently made it onto the government preferred supplier panel for those buses. And they did have a proposal to build a $700 million Australian manufacturing facility in Mossvale in Sydney. That was planned to be on around a 50-hectare site. Unfortunately, that deal did fall over. They were looking for some government funding and assistance for that. So the current buses that Nexport are supplying into the Australian market are coming out of Malaysia, and they're being assembled over there. So it'd be really great if they could get a manufacturing facility onshore here in Australia. Now, another relationship we mentioned earlier that Nexport have is with Tritium. Now, we'll talk about the investors shortly, but one of the foundational investors in Tritium years ago is also involved in Nexport as well, so you can see the link there. And the link between Nexport and Tritium is in the charge infrastructure partnership, obviously. So with Nexport looking to bring electric buses and trucks and vehicles into Australia, there obviously needs to be industrial commercial charging type applications and solutions, so they're working with their partner Tritium to deliver those. And as we mentioned, Tritium's a global leader in this space. They've got a great range of chargers between 50 up to 350 kilowatts. We use those on our road trip. Our Noosa camping video we've got coming up, we've charged with a Tritium charger, so check that out when that comes out, and you'll be able to see one of those in action. And by the way, hit the bell icon if you haven't already, and that'll alert you when we upload our new videos. Back to Tritium, look, they've got 6,700 chargers in operation across 41 countries, and the chargers work or have been proven to work in minus 35 degrees up to above 50 degrees Celsius. So again, this is a great partner to have on your side. They've got a tried and tested product. So now let's check out who's funding it, who's bankrolling it, who's involved, who's got the checkbook that's making all this possible behind the scenes at Nexport. So look, like most of these companies, you can really go down rabbit holes. They're a tangled web, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but when you're trying to sort of make it a little bit clear to follow, it's a bit tricky. So we'll keep it really simple. So we'll just talk about the key player at EV Direct first, and we've mentioned him before. That's the CEO, Luke Todd. Now look, he's based in Sydney. He was educated at the University of New South Wales and done a Master's in Aviation Management. So he has spent quite a lot of time around aviation. It appears to have spent a number of years working in airport operations, specifically in bus transportation, so that sounds logical. And more recently was BYD's principal advisor in the Asia Pacific, and hence the BYD connection. So you can start to see how all the stuff fits together. And he's also been in various roles with True Green Group, Nexport and EV Direct. And we'll talk about True Green shortly. So as I mentioned, this won't be a detailed list. It's just pretty high level to give you guys a little bit of an idea and some comfort of what's going on behind the scenes. So the majority owner in Nexport is Sydney-based True Green Group. Now their website says they're supporting and scaling true Aussie clean tech innovators and entrepreneurs. So for me, that means they're stumping up some cash to get these guys off the ground until they can stand on their own 2 feet. So True Green's investment mandate is to support early stage enterprises and green projects across key sustainability sectors. It's focused on Australia, and it wants to demonstrate measurable ESG benefits indexed against the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So by doing that, they provide funding to cleaner transport, and that's the electric buses and taxis through Nexport, and sustainable boats and marine floats. They also look at greener construction, so cross-laminated timber systems, biodegradable forming materials, smarter energy, renewable energy, plastic waste to energy, healthier environments, so they're into mine remediation, and cleaner waterways, so they're looking at urban wastewater purification and sustainable fisheries. So look, those are all noble causes, and it appears that these guys do have some good projects and connections that they've been working on over the years. The executives of the True Green Group are Kirk Tishlis, I hope I've said that right. He's an executive director. Scott Taylor's the CEO, and Tony Davis is a director. So these execs, between them, have had years of experience in building startup businesses, technology and financing. So again, that's the experience they've brought to the table, and it's going into these industries. So that's why True Green Group are involved in Nexport, because it's a key area of their investment mandate and where they finance projects. So another co-owner and investor in Nexport is St Barker Energy Innovation Fund. Now their website says the St Barker Energy Innovation Fund is focused on opportunities in the clean energy market, along with traditional energy business models. The fund has clear objectives to focus on radical innovation and disruptive technology, and they list a few areas there. Now look, to me that means they are into sustainable renewable energy, but they're also into fossil fuels, and we'll see a little bit more about that shortly. The board and executives of the Energy Innovation Fund are Trevor St Barker. Now he's the founder. Robert Pritchard, the chairman. Roger Whitley, the CEO. David Toomey, the CIO. Stephen St Barker is a director. Dr. Eshen Kulkarni, I think it is the commercialisation manager, and Chris Hay is the COO. So they're the key guys behind the St Barker Energy Innovation Fund, who are a funder, I guess, or owner, part owner in Nexport. So a little bit more about the founder, Trevor St Barker. So he's a Brisbane-based billionaire, so lives here in Brisbane where I do. He was an early investor in Tritium, the charger manufacturer we mentioned earlier. So his background is in resources and energy, and he's made his money in coal and gas-fired power generation. And he's previously been a director of the Queensland Resources Council. He's developed and sold numerous businesses, including ERM Power, which was sold to the global fossil fuel giant Shell. And in 2016, he became an AO, being granted the Officer of the Order of Australia for Business Leadership and Philanthropic Causes. Mr. St Barker appears to be balancing his investments between fossil fuel and sustainable energy industries. However, has been quoted in the media as saying the future is definitely sustainable, zero emission technology. So look, that's great to see. I don't hold it against him. He's made his money in the coal and gas industries. Twiggy Forrest has made his in mining and iron ore, but these guys are putting their money where their mouth is, and they're backing the, as we said, the step change in technology and the new sustainable energy industries. So again, hats off to them for doing that. So finally, another individual investor is the Sydney Roosters chairman, Nick Politis. Now, he pledged money towards the Nexport EV bus manufacturing facility that we mentioned didn't get up. But he's also the largest individual owner in Eagers Automotive, who we mentioned earlier. So he owns 27% of Eagers, and they took a $50 million stake in a capital raising by True Green earlier this year. So again, you can see where all this links back. So it's all related. And finally, a Hong Kong investment fund has also tipped in 110 million. So as you can see, lots of moving parts. We didn't go into all the detail, but that was just to give you guys a high level look at who's involved and the various companies and funding to support Nexport in this development of sustainable transport here in Australia. So after watching all that, we'd love to hear your comments. Are you comfortable buying a car from these guys? Are you worried about them not being around in a year or two for your warranty? Or does the connections they've got with high profile Australians and the financial backing, does that give you comfort that there's not a problem there? So drop your thoughts into the comments section below. Please support us by clicking that subscribe button, and if you can, give us a small donation via PayPal. We'd really appreciate that. If you'd like some personalised advice about buying an EV or owning an EV, please visit our website, electriccaradviceaustralia.com.au, and book a meeting with us. We love sharing the EV experience with people and answering all those tricky little questions that it might be a bit hard to find information online for. So that's it for another video. As we mentioned, we're really looking forward to getting out on the road shortly and bringing you guys more videos of us out and about. So please click that bell icon so you're notified when we upload our next video. Stay safe, look after your friends and families, and we look forward to catching up soon. Cheers.